It's 1:03 on Tuesday, January 24th, Board of Ed Budget Workshop. Can I have a motion to change the agenda? Move the Middlebrook meeting to Thursday?
Yep.
And today we'll add the technology, right?
Yes, in district, so Chuck is ready to go,
discussion,
and then I can handle the rest of it.
to today's agenda.
I move that we alter the agenda just the way you described.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, super, thanks. You guys need it. You want agendas.
We're gonna have a hard stop because I have to pick up a kid at 3:15.
Wait back, I've had three asked to speak to me afterwards.
Great. All right, sorry, I just wanted to capture that change. Good. All right, so welcome. Here we go. This is, as we have done for now, I don't know, the last 5 or 6 years, we take the opportunity over 3 afternoons to really dive into the different cost centers. And so today we'll start with Mrs. Kuhn, followed by Dr. Falcone, and then Eric, Chuck, Maria, and I will pick up the rest. Just as a highlight, we'll give you the highlights of what we're trying to do, but in terms of substantive changes, as you already know, because I'm sure you've been into the budget books, there's not much in the way of substantive changes with, maybe the couple of differences in technology. And so what I asked the administrators to do was to highlight continuing budget priorities, just to really refresh you about what those are, and then also spend a little bit of time talking about things that either were moved out of the budget, the original budget proposal, or items that they may not even have proposed that I'm not aware of, because they just assumed they were going to be cut anyway. So we could have a little mystery and suspense here as part of the conversation today. And then, of course, this is intended to be informal. It's intended to inform your deliberations. And so please feel free to jump in at any time with any question. And we'll go from there. Great. Anything else before we begin? And otherwise, we'll go to Mrs. Kuhn.
Okay. Well, thanks for doing your work. It's definitely helpful for us to kind of know the story behind our budget. I thought I would start with something funny. I was told I'm not allowed to bring cute pictures of cute children, so I thought I would start with something funny because we took some time we're making a Miller Driscoll memory book, and so we had people take a walk down memory lane a few faculty meetings ago. And so I thought this one was super cute because it shows me how precocious some of our students are. So one of the teachers wrote down that, and she's a second grade teacher, she wrote down she had a student a few years back who pretended that she was her mother and called the absentee line to say that she was going to be out sick today. And when she left the message, she ended it by, she started by saying she was going to be out sick, and she ended it with, "I love you, bye." So, I thought that was pretty cute.
That's amazing.
We've got like a million times. That was pretty cool. We're teaching our children all kinds of things. How to impersonate their parents.
It's a good skill set.
I know.
It's getting them ready
Come in handy later.
for high school, right?
Exactly. Just practicing. So hopefully by that time they get to high school, they'll leave out the "I love you" bye.
Or not to start with that.
Yes.
I know, you wish, right? So anyway, I divided my presentation into 3 sections. So what we've been able to do this year, and our focus on this year, our priorities, how we built our budget for next year, and what we would like to do next year and beyond, aka what's at stake. So My presentation is going to be pretty quick, so feel free to stop me if you have questions along the way. And a lot of this you already know about this year. This year we're piloting illustrative math in 2nd grade. We are implementing the new TC reading units in grade 1. We've added play workshops to kindergarten. We've implemented everyday speech, which is a social emotional learning program in kindergarten. We've focused on executive functioning and play in preschool. We've implemented CT SEDS, which is the new state IEP program. It's great. We've implemented DESA, which is a universal screener that the teachers are using with kids around social emotional learning. We have significantly enhanced our diversity, equity, and inclusion resources and have a DEI calendar now. And all of the children are getting assured experiences in regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion through Read Aloud. We've made some changes in our instructional coaching model this year so that we could support the illustrative math pilot and so that we could also create a lab site classroom. So we took 2 of our coaches, one math and one humanities. They're sharing a classroom and teaching that together while also coaching for the other half of their day, which has been great to be able to have teachers in to kind of see their work in action. We've added a phonics blending assessment to kindergarten. We had that before only in 1st and 2nd, and so now that's K-2. As you know, we're focused on our Plan to Study ACT cycle for continuous improvement, and we're doing it across the whole entire school. We are a TC project school for year 5, and again, that supports these changes with the reading units. Our TC staff developer, she was actually here yesterday and is here today. Even with the grades who are not implementing the new reading units, she is previewing a springtime unit with them and talking about what's different between what they're doing now and what the new units include. And then each teacher at the end of the day was setting a goal for 2 things they were going to try before the end of the school year. So we're excited about those changes. And then other just fun things, we've been able to resume school assemblies and a lot of other pre-COVID activities, so that's super exciting. So we're doing all of that based on, you know, the limited amount of money that you gave us last year and the current budget freeze. Which has definitely been impactful given that it started, in October. So that has had a huge impact on a lot of the things we've been able to do.
So, Kat, can you just give some examples? It would be
Can you
helpful.
talk on that a little more?
Tell us what that did.
Well, I think a lot of professional resources, for example. So we had bought, early on in the year, Shifting the Balance, which is a book that we're using with the 1st grade team. We had bought Saving Play, which is a book that we're using with the kindergarten team. But other resources that, have been recommended to us, we don't have the money now available to us to purchase those things. Furniture is always an issue, and some people think, oh, furniture, you have this brand new building, what do you need furniture for? Well, we have this brand new renovated building, and we very much love it, but we didn't get all brand new furniture. And so each year we put in a small amount of money to, again, be replacing furniture that is old desks, old kidney shaped tables, all those things. And so none of those, are able to be purchased. Other purchases around, read alouds, different texts to, again, improve classroom libraries, to, help our library collection become more diverse, all of those things that, we haven't been able to do this year. Some professional development. So we contracted with PC, so that money was encumbered before the freeze, but we had other money in our budget for professional development for people who aren't classroom teachers. And so that's definitely, limited what they've been able to do. So,
What were some things that they
Was that
wanted?
for the paras, the professional development?
no, for like art teachers, PE
Okay.
teachers, so mental health. So those have been some other things that we've, just put off for this year.
Are
For
they trying
us as
to,
administrators.
are they trying to go to something, or were you guys trying to have somebody come talk to them, or are they doing something online?
A little of each.
Okay.
So all of those different things. So a lot of things are online now, which is great because it saves money for travel. But it's just kind of picking and choosing what those things would be. Anything else I'm forgetting? Okay. All right. So when we built the budget for this year, I was told by my boss. What?
I'm going to be the least popular guy in the room for the next 3 days. It's okay. Go ahead.
They're
Come
kind
on.
of throwing you under the
Okay.
bus.
It's okay.
Oh, that's normal. I just want to tell you like what we were asked to do.
Yeah.
Asked, got told, right? He told me I was allowed to say it. So I
That's,
asked. I was like, am I allowed to say that you told me I had to do this? Yes, you are, Kathy. Okay, aren't you guys silent first?
are we ready to move on to start a
time to
million?
go.
Go ahead,
Hold
come
the
on.
fire alarm. Okay. So we were told that we needed to cut the money that we have, control over by 10%. Oh, look at that. Yep. So, being the rule followers we are over at Millie Bristol, we did it. We actually cut everything that we had control over. It turned out to be for a total of 10.47%. That also didn't include any of our increased revenue for preschool. So even though it was budgeted previously that we would have $250,000, we're now we make over $300,000 for preschool. But we didn't count that in because we thought that might be gaming the system. So we did cut our a little more than our 10%. So we kind of took our share. That did obviously have an impact on everything, right? So when we talk to our special teachers, people who have, give us information for budgets, we basically said, okay, here's your total that you had for music, here's your total for art, PE, etc. You can total it all up, but there needs to be a 10% decrease. You can decide where you want that to be. So, in some areas, there are multiple different lines that make up the total for that area. Some people only have general supplies, like art, for example. So they took the cuts and then, just kind of shared with me what that would impact and what they wouldn't be able to do. So art, for example, clay, I guess, is super expensive and is getting more and more expensive. So as things keep getting cut and cut, those were the things where they're like, okay, well, maybe we won't be able to do a clay project, with every single grade level. That's just, an example. There were some big areas where we had to take cuts because we had significant increases in other areas. For example, we hope to do the illustrative math pilot in first grade next year. So that would be first grade and second grade that would be doing illustrative math, which means there needs to be an increase in the textbook workbooks, the workbooks that we buy for that program. So to be able to do that, we took a significant cut to general supplies for science. So that definitely will impact what we're able to do, in our STEAM lab and in the classroom. That's in the Science 21 program. We're gonna, scour closets and things like that, but that was a big cut to general supplies there. And again, that's on top of the budget being frozen now, which makes it even harder. Thank goodness that duck comes every year and lays her eggs in our outdoor learning center because we had to cut out hatching, the chicks. But the duck comes, so as long as she comes,
But no chicks?
then we're hopeful. But so those are things that, again, little by little have to get cut out. We did cut as much as we could out of the TC professional development while still remaining a project school because the access that you have to resources and materials when you're a project school is amazing. But we did take about a $3,000 cut to that. And then pretty much every year, much to Fran Compar's dismay, what we put in for library books and things like that kind of has consistently been cut, I would say, probably over the last 5 years. And sometimes people say, oh, library books, but our collections were already pretty old. And so when you cut there, it just prolongs, our inability to bring the collection up to date. It also limits the efforts that we have to increase the diversity within our library collections. We did get some things that we asked for. Thanks, Kevin.
It's my pleasure.
So So, as you know, this year we had to add another preschool teacher, so we went up to 6 teachers. And we worked really hard to support that program with the paraprofessionals that we were allocated. But we put in the budget for this year to go back to have our model, upheld, which is a preschool teacher and 1.75 paraprofessionals. And so that was something that was granted in our budget. And then also, for the past couple of years, we had 2 classroom teachers and a .45 interventionist that were paid for through the ESSER grant. And so those things were also kept in our budget. The 2 classroom teachers, I know they were paid for through the grant, but there's something that we need based on our enrollment, because we already, sort of that low bubble went through Miller Driscoll, and now we're kind of on the uptick. And it's just to maintain the 39 teachers that we have, so it's not like we're adding any classroom sections.
But also, on iPads, we don't need to replace this issue. Oh, we also were unable to replace the iPads that we were looking to replace for next year.
And that's the kindergarten, for kindergartners, correct?
Yes, we needed about 80, because the ones that are there need to be replaced, they can't be managed, we can't add additional applications to them. They're
Okay.
sort of stuck where they are right now, so
Okay.
we had to remove those as well.
So it's not that they won't be able to be used, they just won't be able to be used in the way that was preferred?
Correct, yes.
Okay,
We're trying to have a grade level set, and we
Okay.
have 2/3 of a grade level set.
okay. Oh, I hear what you're saying, so they don't all have the kindergarten applications on them.
Correct.
So that affects equity in the classroom.
It does.
Thanks. Jump in. Okay. Things we requested but were not granted. We did request additional paraprofessional support for kindergarten. So we have been cut in that area when our kindergarten sections got cut. As our kindergarten sections have gone back up, we've never been able to add back in. So this year we have 12 kindergarten classes, we have 5 kindergarten paras. The 2 team leaders and Janine Carley worked really hard to schedule them to make the most of their support. But as you can imagine, 5 people across 12 classes is a little tricky. Next year we're slated to have 13 kindergarten classes, so that's tricky.
So it's 13 still to the 5 for next year?
Well, right now we have 12 to the 5.
Right.
Yep, and next year we're slated to have 13.
13 to the
So it'll be
5, okay.
13 to 5. So that was something that we didn't get.
Do any of the sped paras operate in kindergarten?
Pardon me?
Do any of the sped paras, are they
They do.
covering kids in
There are
kindergarten?
students who have mandated service in
Mhm.
kindergarten. But we really have, and this is hard because some of you haven't been on the board for very long, but we really have decreased our staff at Miller Driscoll in regards to special education paraprofessionals, in regards to related service. We did go up a special ed teacher a few years ago. We traded in a couple of paras to be able to do that. But when you look overall, kind of year by year, every year, usually we have had a cut, especially in related services. And we took a significant cut in paras when I first started, when we kind of put pre-K, made it a pre-K to 2 school. So there were a lot of efficiencies we looked at. It's funny when you look back at the numbers, because when I look back at the numbers of how many kids were in pre-K when I first got here, and then when we moved to this integrated model, fewer kids, probably twice as many staff, and even we would look at kind of class photos, old class photos of pre-K classes where there were almost as many adults as there were kids. So now we have probably, more than twice as many preschool children.
And less people.
Less staff, yep. But the model really does, the teacher and the 1.75 para, for the most part, that model works very, very well. If we have a student move in who has significant needs or needs, more of a personal care para, that's where we might have to add on. But the model works really well, even with our 2 extended days.
So
We're happy to have our model upheld for next year.
what would be the model numbers for kindergarten.
It'd be nice if we had a pair for every 2 kindergarten classes. That would be ideal. Because then you could also schedule, you could have, two kind of teachers, and when we do their schedule, we could schedule, academics opposite of each other.
Yeah, and the pair would go back and forth.
Yeah, so that you'd be able to have that more of a shared, a shared time. We do tons of training with our paraprofessionals. The regular ed ones in kindergarten, the preschool ones, and the special education ones. So they're really highly trained, and the teachers rely on them a lot to do a lot of, follow-up activities with the kids after they've done instruction. But it's just sometimes, some pair schedules, it's sort of like, okay, I'm 45 minutes in Pam's class, and then I go 45 minutes to Jen's class, and then on Tuesday, or we have a 6-day schedule now, so it's like on day 3, then I have Ruth's class, and then I go back.
And hard educationally to not have a consistent person.
Right, because again, some of them are across 3 classes, some are even across 4 classes.
So you don't have a
depending on
consistent-
the schedule,
Yeah.
so getting to know the kids and all
Yeah.
that, so. We do try to adjust too, based on what you said, Kevin, if we have classes where there's already a paraprofessional maybe due to special ed needs, then we do kind of make some a little bit of adjustment there, but it's tricky. Okay, let's see. As we go into next year, one really big wish that we have at Miller Driscoll anyway would be to speed up the implementation of the pilot of illustrative math. Initially, the thought was we would pilot in 2nd grade this year, we would move it down to 1st grade next year, and then down to kindergarten. We've had some really great results from our illustrative math pilot. Our mid-year MAP scores for 2nd grade, probably higher than they've ever been, even pre-COVID. And so we would like to maintain the instructional coaching support that we have right now to be able to look at ways where we could speed up the implementation in K-1. The other nice part about doing K-1 together is K-1, the program looks very similar, whereas then 2 through 8, it looks a little bit different. So we've had conversations with Trudy Denton about what would be some professional development that we already have, kind of plotted out for 1st grade. How could we include kindergarten, in that professional development? What kinds of coaching support would we need to support the teachers across K and 1 to be able to implement it? If we needed to, how could we stagger that? Centers are a huge part of kindergarten and 1st grade illustrative math. So we're doing some things even this year to introduce the teachers to that, and all 1st grade is gonna pilot a unit, just like 2nd grade did last year. But our hope would have been to accelerate that implementation. And that, we'll have to just see if we have the supports for that. The same is true with the.
Can I ask you a question about
Yes.
that? So typically when we've asked in the past, when things have been successful, and we've asked actually specifically Trudy about pushing forward and having more of our, grades learning at the same time, she's always told us no. So why the change now? Why is she saying that we could handle it and we could make the implementation faster?
I think given the similarities with K and 1, I think that's why it would work in K and 1. I know that you all have had conversations at Cider Mill, I'm not gonna speak for those, but I just think, given, the standards that are addressed across K and 1, and given the, kind of structure of the program, she thinks that we would be able to do it. If right now, again, we adjusted our instructional coaching support, so we have 1.5 math coaches because of this classroom split. And so we think that with that 1.5, and then with the better lessons, professional development, that we would be able to do it.
I don't think Judy or I were initially in favor of doing it, just given the resources that we have.
Yeah.
But Kathy's persistent and has come up with an idea that I think will work.
We can have a conversation at a time. This kind of goes back to all of our frustrations about us never being able to think outside the box and being so, nope, this is the way it is, this is the way, and now we've had Kathy who's come up with outside of the box a way to get it done.
Yeah, it's a risk. I'm not confident that it will work, but again, I think Kathy has made a consistent and valid argument for how to proceed. I'm going to say that it's a risk. I'm not, so here,
I'm not
Jen,
surprised.
when I first got here, we implemented Math and Focus K to 12
Okay.
with minimal training, and we have been suffering for that for a long time.
Right.
I much prefer that we be very thoughtful and systematic in our implementation. Most districts don't implement K to 12. We do it grade level by grade level. Just give the amount of coaching support and fiscal resources we have.
Right.
Both Kathy and Jen, because of our results, are anxious to accelerate that, which is a good thing. If you recall, when I first talked to you about IM, you're like, not sure, right? So it's good that they are accelerating. I just want to be
Right.
cautious that we do it right. That's all. As I said, Kathy's very persistent. This isn't the course that I would take. But she seems confident that she can make it work. And
Also, the
because-
similarities between first and kindergarten probably is a more compelling argument than either third or fourth grade.
Right. And I can rely on Kathy that if she wants something to work, she will make it work. So that's kind of why I agreed.
Because she's persistent.
We got it. Okay.
Relentless is more.
It's another skill my elementary school kids are learning.
Relentlessness?
Persistent.
Persistence, yes.
So let me ask you a follow-up question then. So if you're gonna go forward with that, does something need to change in what you presented to us in terms of your budget?
If we can maintain our instructional coaches
Then
that
you're
we
okay?
have, yes.
I'm
So,
also toying with the idea of supplementing that with some external coaching, so we often work with the organization runs better lessons. So if our coaches are feeling a little stretched, I might have enough room in my budget to supplement that coaching with better lessons.
Okay.
What's the persistent, Kathy? Apologies for my being late. What are you
there might be a
suggesting?
list, Mandy.
What's number one?
I was just saying we would like to accelerate the implementation of the illustrative math pilot based on the results we got in second grade.
Yep.
So, and K and 1 are very similar in the way the program runs. K and 1 run a certain way, second through 8 run
A
a
different
little
way.
bit differently.
Yeah.
Also, just looking at the standards across K and 1,
Yeah.
you know, there isn't a huge difference there. That's not, it's much more similar. So that's why I think it's easier at the lower levels. And I think the teachers will be very excited about the centers that are a huge part of the K and 1 program. So. That was my one. Okay, then, yeah,
Just, you have enough support to implement in second next year.
we've already implemented in second.
First.
So, but I'm sorry, in first.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, so it would be accelerated.
Really accelerate.
And again, there are things that, you know, we're starting to do this year, just because of the results that we got from second grade. So, like we did last year in second grade, we kind of primed the pump to be
Yep.
able to, you know, pilot with the whole grade level for this year. We're doing those same things with first grade, but we're figuring out again, we have illustrative math coming, I think it's that Friday before vacation, early release day, to talk about the centers part with first grade. So we're talking about, okay, well then could we just have kindergarten also be a part of that? Because again, it's very similar. It's similar in the way that we had second and third grade doing training last year, you know, together.
Together.
So. Okay. Another new thing that's coming down the pike next year are the TC writing units. So we have all the new reading units. We've implemented them in first grade this year, again, just because we have different areas of focus for each grade level this year. But there are the writing units coming down that we should have next year. And so that's another piece that we'll utilize our coaching support for, but we'll have to look for the best way to do that, especially if we do decide we're gonna accelerate the math, then the best way to do that, just so we don't overwhelm the teachers, This year in second grade, we spent pretty much the first half of the year focusing on math, and now they're moving into the changes for the second grade reading units, which has been really nice. And so we would look at how we would do that next year. So.
I'm glad you brought that up. So Jim, that's another thing we often have to think about at the elementary level in particular is how much can we ask new of teachers. And I knew that there were new units coming out in reading and writing, and that kind of informed my reluctance to accelerate the math. Does that make sense? But again, Kathy's clever.
I think it's for make a word bank for you. So, Kathy, maintaining the current coaching support that you have now would give you the space to,
Yep.
okay, but it would give you the space to pursue both. Okay.
And again, that's where we look across the year to say,
Yeah.
hey, where are the teachers going to start? How are we going to use IETs? How are we using faculty meeting time?
Mhm.
You know, and how are we differentiating based on the grade levels, depending upon what
Yep.
we need and where we are.
What-
I,
Sorry, what would be the, I'm going to ask a question for you and Chuck. What would be the impact of one fewer coach at Miller Driscoll next year?
oh, well, it would have, I think it would have a huge impact because, I think I've said this before, but elementary teachers teach everything. So that's tricky. I think there are a lot of changes, and whether we get the waiver and have TC or not, there are changes that are being made to reading and writing based on the science of reading. I feel like we're ahead of the curve when it comes to those changes based on some things that we have done at Miller Driscoll by adding in Hagerty, by doing the TC phonics units, even looking at the new TC reading units where the decoding and the phonics is woven into those units. So I feel like we're in a good place there, but there still are shifts that we need the teachers to make, and we need the teachers to have the support to do that. And then when you add in this writing piece, it's sort of like, okay, so there's some changes to reading, there are these brand new writing units, and then there's this change to the math. So I think it's a lot. And I think if they have the support, they can do it. And if we utilize our professional learning time in a strategic way, I think that we can do it. But they need the coaching support because those are the people who are coming in saying, okay, so here's how I'm going to model. Like just like we do with kids, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to model for you, then we're going to do it together, and you're going to do it, and I'm going to watch you, and then, okay, go ahead and apply. But teachers rely on that. And even if they're not in a coaching cycle, teachers are signing up for response time. Teachers are signing up to do a lot of planning. So this increase, how we readjusted our math in ELA. We have Joe Scholes as a 1.0 math coach now. He is masterful. And people sign up for him to come in and model lessons, for him to teach with them, but then also for a lot of planning time. Which to me speaks volumes if a teacher is like, I want to spend my 40 minutes of planning time, planning with you. So I do think it's different at the elementary level because again, the onus is on these classroom teachers to teach everything.
With
I have
one
a question about that, though. I mean, I agree about the elementary level and the importance of coaching. Mm-hmm. But if you did not have coaches, because so many schools don't, what does that look like?
I think it would take longer to implement and make the changes that we want to make. Like that's the biggest piece. Because
So
I
like
feel
2x?
Pardon me?
Like 2x, twice as long, would you say, or 3 times? Like,
I don't know. I think it could be up to 3 times as long because I feel like, you missed this part, but right now, yesterday and today, we have the TC staff developer there, right? And so those coaches are right along with, half a grade level of, teachers. We have a whole rotating schedule, so they go in, they have these 2 hours with the TC staff developer who's unpacking the new reading unit.
but that's
that
an
they're doing
external,
in
right?
spring.
The TC staff is an external consultant.
Correct.
Right.
But the coach is there with them. So it's
Right.
sort of like, I'm gonna give you so much information in this 2 hours.
And now you're gonna
And now,
decipher it.
you with your coach,
Right.
you're gonna be able to now talk about, okay, how are we gonna implement the avid readers unit in kindergarten in April?
Right.
What supports do you need? What, again, is the same, is what you've been doing in the past? What's different? What do you need me to model? What are things that are different, from just materials that you're supplying to the kids versus how you're even structuring your readers workshop? So I think because there is that coaching support, there's just this reality of oftentimes, if you go to a workshop, it's like a one-shot deal. I'm gonna say, if I go to a workshop, I'm like sitting there, oh, that's a great deal, that's a great deal, that's a great
There's
deal.
no
I
follow
make
through.
little note cards with myself, put a little thing, and then you go back and it's like, okay,
Right.
like,
There's
you're
no
doing,
follow through.
doing,
Yeah.
doing.
No, I get it.
So I think, the support for the coaches in the classroom with the teachers, the support for the coaches planning with the teachers, and the support the coaches provide through instructional effectiveness teams is like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I do think that's why we've been able to make the changes with this illustrative math, because we've had that coaching time to support it. They go and do the better lessons, PD, but then it's like, okay, but then how do we put that into action in an elementary classroom? Where, like I said, you don't, you're not teaching that same, course or lesson over and over.
And
Like,
does that math program, I cannot say that word, I need to go back to military school to say that word, the I word.
Illustrative.
Yeah, I just had a hard time with that word, I'm not even trying. Does that have external coaching people as well? So TC has external people who could come in, does that have consultants who can come in as well?
That's
Do all these programs offer a consultant who works for illustrative math or who works for TC?
The illustrative math program is supported through PD through this company called Better Lessons.
Okay.
So again,
Right, I
they
get
did
that. No, I get that, I just didn't know if there were, no, I understand.
yeah.
And I just want to be clear, PD is different than coaching.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, coaching does involve some professional development, but this is more of a traditional sit and get information type of learning. And the TC too, she does do some demonstration, but they're not comparable
The modeling. yeah.
models of professional learning.
At the end of the day, you're going to have more solid learners coming out of second grade, going to Southern Mill, with all that input over those years.
We're already
With the
seeing that.
coaches, with all of that input that those kids are getting from kindergarten through second grade, you're going to have a solid learner going into third grade where the shift is completely, because you're not learning to read, you're reading to learn, and you have to have those skills. So to me, it's invaluable what you have going there now.
Yeah.
Just the support and just the effort. I mean, Rosemary alone,
She's a slow talker though.
she's so slow. She's like a machine gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
So just to go
No.
back to your
Keep going.
question though, Kevin, if we didn't have coaches, we'd have to rethink the pace at which we implement new units and new instructional strategies. And we'd have to think about, it's not just the pace, it's the quality. I'm not so sure.
That's what I was gonna say, it's not, you can't 2 times it, 3 times.
Right,
Right,
it's the
right.
quality of the
Level of
implementation.
effectiveness.
And so if we, decrease the quality at military school, that we'll see the ripples all the way through 12th grade.
Because that's where it all starts. That's the bottom. And then you build from there. And you're just building learners all the way up.
Sorry.
No, I'm just trying to be cognizant of time.
Oh, okay. The other thing that we had put in the budget and that didn't stay in the budget, we did want to have one of our reading interventionists trained to become an Orton Gillingham Fellow with the hopes of then being able to have her train other people. And so that was something that we had to take out of the budget.
That's too bad.
I mean, we still have a lot of people who are Orton Gillingham trained, but I think over time it would be really helpful to have a fellow trained in district who could then provide the training for others.
And we wouldn't have to be paid.
So we're not
Yeah,
paying,
it's an effective reading program.
An outside person.
At some point, Kathy, can you maybe just get to us the percentage of kids who are now using or taking up of Orton Gillingham?
Intervention?
Intervention Orton Gillingham, yeah.
I mean,
So so the person that was going to be able to train others how to use it within the curriculum, but then also separate for intervention services? The person who would be
Gonna be a
trained,
fellow.
would be a fellow.
Yeah.
That training, is that, and then train others, is that used in the classroom or is that used in intervention?
You could use it for both.
For both,
There
okay.
is a classroom educator
Right.
level training.
Okay.
That when I was in Greenwich, we had a lot of kindergarten and first grade
Okay.
classroom teachers get that level
Okay.
of training.
Mm.
So that's what I would look at, because
Okay.
I feel like I always say, it's sort of like,
Let's- okay.
if you improve the classroom instruction,
Mhm.
they would also do training for, special ed
Right,
teachers,
okay.
interventionists, new people, new
Okay.
special ed teachers or interventionists, so that's the
Okay.
piece. So basically, just to summarize, I mean, for us to maintain, I think, the progress that we've made over the years, at least since I've been here, I would ask to maintain our instructional coaching support that we have. I'd like to maintain, or, me, I always like to reduce class size. But I would like to maintain the support staff that we have, because we've had, again, significant cuts when you look across the 7 years that I've been here. And I really would like to increase the kindergarten para support, that was cut from the budget, so.
And you guys have 6 classes in preschool now?
We do, and we're
Is-
gonna keep 6 next year. And so I had said before, what was included in my budget was putting in that 1.75 para to maintain that model.
Got it. And is there, like, in a perfect world, would you have more classes in preschool?
We'd have to see what the numbers are. Hold on, because I had Patty send me the numbers.
Because along that same line, Kevin, are the numbers, the enrollment, is that the same numbers that, these numbers look much higher, the enrollment numbers at the top, so like into 2025 with 883, is that what?
I'd have to go back and look and see where that,
Oh, so that does include, okay, that was.
probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but right now in preschool, we have 72 students, 7 itinerant students, anywhere from 3 to 5 at least, who are anticipated to start between now and June. And so we'll look at, right now we have 3 3s and 3 4s, but based on that number of 3s, next year we might have to have 2
2
3s
more.
and 4 4s.
Right.
So as they move up, the numbers are getting big.
Yeah, that's a big bubble of 3s.
Okay, thank you. Ready, Jen?
Sure. All right, so last team says Ms. Kuhn over here. Very proud and thankful for the work my teachers have been doing with the accelerated learning framework. They've made significant gains students to recoup from the pandemic. You're going to hear a lot of the same themes. I think, again, we're here saying the same thing. It's been multiple years of cuts, and that's felt through specifically our inability to kind of move forward with any new programming, but also just in regard to, I'll just pick the supply line, like multiple cuts year over year. It makes a huge, has a huge impact. Curriculum-wise, it starts to impact, for example, classroom libraries, to go with any new units, to change. The library has been cut multiple times. So we're at, I had Fran give me the updated age where the average age is up to 2007. 7 years ago it was back in '98. So we've definitely made improvements, but that's a line that every year it's cut, and we're living in a different world, and that requires different books for our kids, and we really have not been able to keep up with that. And it's little cuts. Like right now, it sounds so silly, but I'm looking for an accompanist to play for the concert, and that's a huge. I've now got to come up something. There's no space in the budget for when things come up, and it makes every little decision that you make as the school year evolves extraordinarily challenging. Like right now, I'm trying to figure out where to find $300. Like that's not a lot of money, but like it's something that was not anticipated, and now with the budget frozen and not being able to have any, money to move anywhere, something like that becomes a huge struggle to kind of, to work through. That was just this. We have a similar issue with furniture. Year over year, that's not something that we keep up with, and that's something that over time, just like anything in facilities, you start to see like wear and tear, and things like if you walk around when you come into the building, which I want to thank Nicola for coming in, but when you actually stop and look at the furniture that is in our rooms, it's old. Most of the bookshelves teachers have bought themselves and have brought into their classrooms, and when you move people around, that continues to kind of break and fray. And Jose a few years ago, I think Kevin, you worked with him quite significantly to come up with like a multiple year plan, but every year that's an easy place to get cut. And so I can't remember I don't even know if we ever, I think we came up with the plan, and I don't think it's
Never
ever
fully
been-
funded it, yeah.
Yeah, we've never been able to fund, like, basically if you replace like 2 classrooms every year with full kind of like
20
desks,
grand.
chairs, shelving, everything, eventually you'd kind of like catch up. But unfortunately, because it's not people, that's the first place that we go to kind of cut. And if you just physically walk into our classrooms, you will be able to look around and see that. So that over year to year has a big impact. We've made some great strides with a lot of our SEL work. There are things we've been able to do in a very positive way that haven't cost money. Extra morning meeting time. We've included an SEL room block to find extra time to really have teachers focus on community building. So it's not like there's not a lot of positive things going on, but the budget definitely is having an impact. Coaching and IETs, I would say, have really contributed the most to the work that, or the student achievement gains that we've seen. I will say I'm very concerned with the narrative around coaching lately. When you think about the number one indicator for any student is teacher effectiveness, it's very concerning just listening to the narrative.
Jen, is that narrative from your teachers?
Not from my teachers, I think in this district, what I hear. What's concerning to me is that, to not recognize how coaching could make anybody become better, I think it's concerning, and I think we should be asking questions of this conversation. Why, if people feel like it's not effective, from being an administrator in my building, I would like to know more about why. I mean, to me, it is the number one, it is research-based, it is more than any outside training, more than any one-shot anything, having that coach move you along in your practice is the number one best way of doing so. So, I just ask as a board for you guys to maybe learn a little bit more about it and to maybe ask questions, because I'm very concerned that every budget meeting that I'm at, it seems to be very easy for people just to kind of target that as a, we're adding coaches, we're not adding teachers, and I'm just going to share that I'm very concerned with some of the narrative that I hear around it. And I would start asking questions about, why do you not find it valuable? Because to me, that indicates there's potentially there's something behind that, if it's not being valued. So as I think about professional capital, and knowing that teachers are our number one kind of most prized possession in our district, we are also moving forward with the math program. Unfortunately, the amount of money that we would need to do 2 grade levels, because I also would like to do 2 grade levels, but financially we can't add if I was able to add the materials, so I want to say, like, it's not really a workbook, it's more of like booklets and things like that, but I would have been able to figure out the professional learning part of it, but at this point I have not been able to budget for the materials for 2 grade levels. So at this time I'm still going forward with only one grade level, which is going to be grade 4. Obviously, grade 3 is going to move into grade 4, and then obviously grade 3 is going to continue because they'll take on the second graders coming up. I would prefer to not wait for 5th grade. But if I could have squeezed in the materials, I was also requesting a math coach. I only have one math coach, not 1.5, so it would have been hard for me to do 2 different grade levels with one coach. But that didn't even make it into the budget, so that was cut before we got to this stage.
So the next year, the plan is, I know grade 3 is doing it now,
Yeah.
so they'll.
Grade 4 will
They'll do
add
it
on.
with grade 4 will be the add-on, grade 3 will maintain,
Yeah,
and currently grade 4, the current grade 4 that's moving to grade 5 hasn't had any IL.
they've been piloting one
unit, and I know the 5th grade this year is piloting 1 unit, and they'll pilot another unit next year, but
Correct.
it's just a unit,
Yeah.
correct? Okay.
And you have one math coach for the whole school?
Yep. Yep. Okay, so that would be my wish. I'm kind of going a little out of order. Kathy had her nice and organized, but that would be my wish, is to put that back in, both the materials and the coaching. So
So it's the
2
materials
different-
and then a 0.5 additional coach?
I was asking for a 1.0.
Or a 1, okay.
Yeah, just because.
Okay.
Right now, my one coach is fully allotted to grade 3 and is full-time on that, so the.
And
idea
next year it would be
we'd
allotted
have
to grade
2.
4, okay.
Yeah, I'd have 1 for each grade level.
And remember,
Okay.
they're math science.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. For ELA, we are, timing-wise, I had hoped to get the new reading units. So at this point, I don't know where we are with budgeting for that. Number one, they're hoping that it's there, that the materials are ready for the spring, because I'd like to put those out for the teachers to be able to review and to look at. So as you know, grades, the lower grades, TC had all of the new units this year in reading. For the upper grades, we would be next. So it's kind of, they start at the primary grades, and then it would move up to grade 3 next year. Trudy and Karen are both working together to make sure, however it ends up at the end of this budget year, with which new math units are going to be implemented, then trying to offset that for reading and writing, because we have new, just like Mella Driscoll, we'll have new reading and writing units, and so depending on exactly what's budgeted and who we have coaching and all of that, we'll make our final decisions. But those are 2 areas that I'm not sure where they're going to land right now with the budget.
When you say final decision,
Yeah.
does that mean whether both move forward, one moves forward first, one goes second? Like what?
So right now, we would start with reading.
Okay.
Is my priority. But they have new reading and writing units.
Okay.
That are being.
So it's whether you could do the
Yes.
reading and writing. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, their current, I'd be requesting more. It would be a huge impact on our schools and the way we operate, specifically with our IETs, the way they're embedded with everything, all of the new curriculum. And again, I think it's easy to say, okay, well, at some point, we're going to be done with new curriculum. That's not the way it works. Again, when you think about effectiveness, there is always something for a teacher to get better at. And there are some districts that I guess don't have coaching, but I can tell you there are a lot that do, and it would be a huge disservice to the work that we've been doing if that was to change. So.
Kevin, just to clarify that statement, in the DRG, do most districts have or have not coaching?
Most have, or they're adding. Darien is the district that at present doesn't have instructional coaches. When we visited them to look at their math classrooms last spring, that was with the math coordinator, like her #1 priority. I haven't looked at their budget to see if they've added coaches.
And is New Canaan definitely adding them in their budget?
I don't know, I haven't looked at it.
There was a report that they were, but I don't know what the final
I
budget
have
was.
to go and I can ask. I'm going to see all of them on Friday, so I'll ask.
Got it.
I thought New Canaan was more for behavioral than instructional. So report though, right?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
So then the next piece of that, like I said, we made a lot of changes with SEL to really focus on that, as you've heard in many of our conversations here. I guess the easiest way of saying is, like, I feel like our kids forgot how to be kids. There's a lot of low-level angst that is out there with our children right now that creates some bigger problems. It's part of what I think our special ed group, when they come, they're going to be presenting, I believe, a model that they've been brought up. You guys have talked about that, right, at different meetings? So I'm not sure who knows what. Okay. So there has been a focused effort to think about, I think they originally started the word Genesis-like programming, which it's a very different. So I know that's how it was originally brought up, so
It's
just
called Baby Genesis.
something like that, and it's so not like what we were trying to do. It's not even a separate place. It's within our school, so to me, they're not, I wouldn't
Analogous.
use that language. But the idea is that, like you have in secondary, you have kiddos that need a little extra support. They need a different structure, I won't say environment, and they need some additional support. So Sharon D'Angelo and we have worked to think about how we can create a similar structure, but within our school environment, and setting up a space where we might be able to have some more targeted support with the mental health support. So we would have a special ed teacher, but also a behavioral kind of psychologist, BC or a BCBA, that would work together to really focus and support these students who we have seen in recent years an uptick in some pretty significant behaviors. Sharon D'Angelo, I believe, has shared kind of the increase in outplacement in 211 calls. We've had a significant increase in DCF calls, and all together, 211, 911, we've even called a couple times this year and last year. And so just all together, it's just paints a picture of a much higher need mental health wise that we have in our schools. And again, that's something that we were not able to even proceed with to be in this budget.
So
and
what
again,
would
that's
that
a
look like
concern.
as far as, are we even putting that on the table for this year's budget?
It's
Not
not
at this moment.
It's
no.
not at this
It's
moment.
it's still it's a concept, and
Right.
the concept really needs to be distilled in much
Yeah, I
the same
agree.
way that Genesis was
Yeah.
developed. But I think what's important is we're kind of hearing the needs and starting to amass the data to better understand the need.
But the biggest cost of that concept, besides everything else, would be, do we have the staff to even?
Right, so then it's the staff. So it was a special ed staff and it was a mental
Because we don't
health
So it's
currently have-
person.
two
Correct.
FTE
Got it.
is what
Got
the
it.
proposal would be.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So I think those were the two big things that didn't get put in. Again, I think I mentioned the library techs, and again, just an ongoing concern that we just find ourselves in this pretty tough budget position year after year. It is impacting. It's like, I feel like for the last few years where we kept saying it's going to impact, it's impacting. Like it's and on a daily basis, it's impacting decisions we have to make at the school level.
So you need to give some more details about that, though. Like, because you're kind of talking
Yeah.
you named like the search for the accompanist and trying to come up with
Yeah.
$200. I think like that's a great example.
I know, that just happened this morning. It's like but I mean, think about it. Like everything that was in our budget last year, I mean, I'd have to look at it. Like every single thing that we were supposed to be able to buy, we've not been able to buy. So we haven't been able to move forward with any of it.
Well, so and I'm not challenging that,
Yeah.
but I think just for the sake of the conversation,
Yeah.
like getting really specific about what is going to be important, because I sit back,
Yeah.
I'll speak just for myself, like I am in this budget as much as anyone, except for probably Mary Ann.
Yeah.
And we come to the end of a year and say, okay, we didn't do X, Y, or Z. Like, I might have, kind of label level
Yeah.
information, but not impact level information.
Right, so I'll give you one example. The Win Studio, right? So I think I finally had to come, maybe ask Chuck for approval. Like, we would have art supplies, right? And we've always been able to like say, okay, if something comes up, and I didn't budget for like the Win supplies for studio. You know how studio.
What's Win?
So studio this year we've been able to optimize. Our schedule and some staffing to allow kids some choice during recess. So we call it studio. And in the past, we've done Win Enrichment, same kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But kids can choose to go indoor for either art or music or PE a couple times a week. Different houses, different times. Obviously, everybody can't go in at once, right?
Yeah.
So, but we're doing that this year, and we just don't have supplies. So literally, I had to ask for a special request to be able to purchase art supplies, because I don't have any financial funds that are unfrozen for us to be able to purchase anything. So that happened last week. I could start writing them down. It's like if I looked at the budget, like that's one example.
Yeah.
Books, like somebody was looking for a book. Like we would be able to go buy a book if we need a book. Somebody, teachers are having to ask, to borrow books from other classrooms because they can't buy the books that we would have bought to go with a new unit or what have you. I'm just trying to think of what's recently
Yeah,
happened.
and here's my point.
Yeah.
Like, I think those are great examples.
Yeah.
And it's
Just
so,
everyday functioning.
as we're saying, it's having an impact.
Yeah.
Like that, when I hear that means
Yeah.
something, and I want to know what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean that's just happened like the last 3 days. Like I'm just trying to think what else has that I've.
Yeah, the studio example is a good one. 'Cause
Yeah.
this is a really talk about thinking outside the box and
Yeah.
being innovative. It's as you had heard earlier in the year, part of the social development of kids
Right.
was impacted through COVID, and
Right.
so
we're trying to
managing
spread out
recess,
as much as we can.
creating new opportunities
Yeah.
for really constructive play and engagement.
Yeah.
Studios, the kids love it. Every kid I talk to and
Yeah.
ask about it, they
Yeah.
it's the best thing about the year.
Yep.
And so being able to resource it appropriately really
Correct.
is a wise investment. And so having the budget.
But now also that's had an impact on our regular art classes because we were borrowing, stealing. You know what I mean? It's just like this domino effect. You keep trying to like take from somewhere, and that's what I'm saying. It's all catching
Yeah,
up.
and here's
very-
another
very
just another
frustrating,
reality of the
sure.
budget,
Yes.
right? So studio wasn't a concept
Correct.
last January.
Mhm.
As they were problem solving around this summer, studio became a concept.
Correct.
And so it just speaks to again how the budget's planning cycle is
Doesn't match.
oftentimes out of sync
Practice.
with program improvement planning, because there's such an organic element to the way that we plan program improvement.
And Kevin, I'm putting my totally naive hat on here, but if I was like a taxpayer in Wilton who says, can't you ask the PTA for that? Or can't you send an email to all the parents saying, due to budget constraints, we are looking for art supplies. If you want to donate $20, $50, $100, like, can we not get to that point of just, I love the creative, I love the thinking outside the box, but I also like, oh my God, I'm getting inundated by people being like, how come the schools can't figure out $90 million? When it comes down to like art supplies, how in our $90 million can we not get paint? And again, this is like, I'm not saying I agree with this, but this is what I hear. So are we at the point of saying to the PTA, like, can you do a fundraiser targeted to Win to put that money in?
I mean, in the past, we've always operated on that this is the board's responsibility to
Yeah.
provide an education for our kids, and
Totally
we've
agree.
been very careful not to ask the PTAs to fund what should be funded in the budget. We've actually been very careful
Yeah, I agree.
to separate our requests out.
Yep, and so that would be my answer is, so thinking like short-term need versus
Right,
long-term
right.
sustainability need.
No, it's like plugging a hole with a fingernail.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean-
Two different, and
Yeah.
philosophically, Jen's
Yeah.
right on point. Like, if this is programmatic, then, we ought to be able to fund it through our
Yeah,
operating
100%.
budget.
But if we're not.
Exactly.
Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but
go
like,
ahead.
just, we're living in a time where we're not, right? Jen's just talked about after cut after cut. And, you know, as someone who grew up in the 70s where everything was cut,
Yeah.
like constantly, I mean, this reminds me very much of that, is, you know, we couldn't do labs because no one would
Right.
buy a beaker. Like, and I hate to turn to the PTA or to the parents and say, but, like, if we need clay, like, what kindergarten doesn't do a clay project?
Right.
Or, you know, maybe we have to do that, even though it's not what we want to do, it's not how we define public education, it's not what should happen. But
It's
you have an
enrichment.
option
It's
when we're.
enrichment.
Well, it just makes the whole thing better, you know, having
Well, it just-
clay
I
in
wouldn't say it's
kindergarten is-
enrichment, though. I would be
No, and
careful
I-
with saying
I
that.
It's
understand.
not the
There's
enrichment,
some
it's
like-
just day-to-day
Yes.
operating.
That's
So
what
that
I'm feeling,
When you
yes.
want a
Yes.
book, you want to be able to get the book so that the classroom can
Correct.
do their work. So this is just normal
Yeah,
day-to-day,
I'm thinking
how to
enrichment,
run a
like
school.
when, like, I want some pink paint, to,
Yeah.
like, just,
I would say that's the least of my concerns. I'm
day-to-day
like,
operating.
yeah.
No, but I know ideal, like in an ideal world and how we look at public education, absolutely, the
Right.
public should pay for it. It's not a parent issue, and I'm on your side, all of
Yeah.
you, you know that. I
Yeah.
hope you know that.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, but sometimes like we're in this place where we're asking for 5.99%, and I don't know that the town will understand it or want to do it. No, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, so why can't we maybe, and, you know, because again, you know, sorry to try.
You're always
this out.
got the
I've lived in Wilton
naysayers.
forever,
Right.
and I've seen this come and go. And so I grew up in a time when we had this kind of budget cuts and people had to supplement, and then it went away, right? Like when the economy gets better and the class, you know, and things change. I mean, I think, you know, and we catch up, the public catches up to what all you are doing. I mean, Jory keeps saying, oh, it's not our grandparents at public education, but I don't think people who, like my youngest is 22, I don't think I can even understand all the things you're talking about.
Right.
And I support you,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
if people are just,
Yeah, I mean, if that's something we were going to do as a district, we just have been careful not to do
Yeah,
it.
and I've been resistant to it myself.
Yeah.
Because I think.
I actually think there's a state law too that for like maybe not like if we were to fundraise for certain events, that I think that's different. But I do know when you talk about supplies, like we've always come into this issue where like we're at the point where our like supply kits, they're expensive at this point because of everything that we've taken out of our
Keep adding.
budget,
Yeah.
right, has to get added somewhere, and so we keep adding to
So, like,
these
now bringing 10
supply
gallons of
kits.
paint
So
to the house.
the parents are like exactly like you're like seriously,
7,000
right, and then somehow it's like gets pooled together, but like
So, listen, this is, we need to
Your
talk
child
about
needs
this
his own
in a
chair.
different place.
Yeah.
But I think it's also incumbent upon us to think about the resources we're using. And I would not sit here and suggest to you that universally across this district, we really give a lot of thought to the kinds of supplies we shove into that box. I have 5 kids and 5 backpacks, and I look at what's in those backpacks. And in January, what has not been used. And so I
Never been
think
touched.
we have to test our own assumptions, you know, before we just shift the burden to somebody else. And I think, again, and we've talked about this in other places, but sometimes the budget and the budget pressures can be a positive pressure to re-examine our assumptions. And I ask as part of this ongoing process, we continue to do that. I think to answer Mandy and Laura's concern, if we were going to shift, and this would be a philosophical shift, even if it was temporary, I wouldn't do it just for Clay in 3rd grade.
Right.
This would be a conversation with all of the PTAs to say, all right, look, given where we are today, we're reconsidering how we view the PTA and the potential fundraising that the PTAs do beyond enrichment, which is, or, you know, supports. And so you might see requests from your principals for things that, you know, otherwise might live in an operating budget. And so, but I would do that kind of wholesale,
Like a seismic
district-wide.
shift, yeah.
well, it also involve the PTA changing their bylaws, because right now.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Well, I just remember when Miller Driscoll was being built, the PTA, they wanted special speakers. And we did like a special PTA vote to get like upgraded speakers for the music.
so those kinds of things we still do, but those are for special, like one-off
Right.
kinds of things. And we
Not for
will
continuous.
we'll write grants for that kind of stuff. So for example, like we did the playground stuff.
Right.
So they did a huge fundraising thing for that. So those kinds of things, our PTAs are fantastic. We've just been careful for regular supplies, things to
Normal things that an operating budget should
yes.
be supplying for you.
Correct.
Without
We have
question.
stayed away from that.
So, can I ask, Kathy started off by saying she cut she overachieved on her 10% request to cut.
Okay, yes.
So I was just wondering, do you have a number where?
I
you
had
came
asked
in?
I don't know where my final came in under, but we had gone through the same process of
Okay.
telling everybody to cut 10%. I don't know if mine ended up coming in as nicely as Kathy's.
Cider Mill was doing well until you added the books for the program.
For the
Doing
what?
well by Marion.
Oh,
definition,
yes,
doing well.
so I think we were under 10%, and
Okay.
then the words, are you talking about the words their way?
So, yes,
Okay,
that
so,
pushed you back over to the other
okay,
side.
so
Okay.
we did
That's
come
a
under,
request,
and then,
the books got added, and that put you back into being over.
okay, so
Okay.
as part of the
Yeah,
science of
it's fine.
reading,
And here's why. I mean,
Yeah.
so I
We
I
have-
mean,
Yeah,
I knew
I'm
a
just-
year ago
yeah.
that this budget
Yeah.
was going to be a train wreck. And so when we started the process, I asked all these guys to set a target below spending from this current year. And, you
it
know,
was under.
to the best extent they were able to, they would. And we've heard a lot of talk now about, you know, kind of on the margins, how this is impacting operations. And I think the story is really important, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I think, you know, man, it's a great point you raise about, you know, you're, you know, kind of a peripheral observer, and you're looking at a $90 million budget, and it's like,
Yeah.
why can't you buy a pot of clay? Well,
Yeah.
you can't.
Seems so
Yeah.
silly,
Because
right?
it's sopped up in energy costs and
No, I
salaries
agree.
and
Yeah.
health
Totally.
benefits, that's why.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess then Cider Mill over the last year, like growth has just been tremendous. And some of do you feel like you have the resources for next year in this budget to help move some of that growth into the overall kind of achievement? You know, pushing that growth up to the next level in terms of.
Yeah, like our
Yeah.
focus will remain the same, and like I said, with the current staffing and the coaching support and all of our IETs and all of that will remain the same. Again, I'd like to move faster with the math. So I don't know how we'd ever add that in, so, you know, I guess I would like to, like, go
Yeah.
forward with that. So I feel like we've had success, we will do what we can and give
And
everybody
you are
answers to
moving forward with
questions.
at least one
We
grade
are
level.
moving forward with one grade level.
I think that's what kills me though, right? We all talk about math, and here we're saying, oh, we could do this, but now we can't find the money to support it, right? If we're off the, hey, we can't move our school along fast enough, and we're on to now it's a budget issue, like that's a bigger, in my mind, a
Right,
bigger
but
issue than.
it's the same thing with the Words Their Way. So Words Their Way is part of this whole science of reading, and these new books are Words Their Way. Teachers' manuals were from
2007, something like that.
the old, and
Well,
so
that's what started
so
when
much
we
has
started.
changed, and so, you know, we're in a position where, you know, we're still looking at Words Their Way as a program itself, but at this point, it's what we have, and there's a better version, a much better version. It's more explicit. It's, you know, instructionally for the kids to kind of better align with what the science of reading is. This matches. That's what Marianne is sharing was added afterwards, because we realized that we didn't have the right version. So that is added into the budget, but it doesn't, we don't have the math. So.
Kevin, question about these enrollment, I was looking over these last night. So in the enrollment at Cider Mill, as you look over on the first page. the
What
very
page are you
top,
looking at?
Like the very first page of Cider Mill.
Yep.
So the enrollment goes 774, like that.
Oh, yeah.
The teachers stay the same as the enrollment grows. So by doing that, are we saying we're expecting class sizes to increase?
I have to look at that. I'm not sure that the assumption about head count, I've
Okay.
always just kept the head count.
Perfect, so I
assumption
just didn't
static.
know if we're already putting that assumption out there, or if it's
Because
just
we're going
kinda-
up 2 sections in
Yeah,
third grade.
I just didn't know if that hadn't been.
Yeah, I can figure that out for you
Okay.
pretty quickly, but yeah. So don't assume that there's a relationship between staffing
Okay,
and enrollment
perfect.
on
I
that
just didn't
page.
know if that was purposeful or not. And then Jen, as someone who's questioned coaches, I just want to, what you were saying earlier, I think coaches are amazing. If everyone could have a coach, I come from a world of coaching. There's nothing, the impact is incredible. To me, it's a question of how much can 2 or 3 people do in an entire school?
Yeah, how it's
versus
organized.
having an outside consultant come in and not having to pay the FTE and the insurance. So that to me, I mean, I'm a huge fan of coaching, I just don't know that 3 people can help 50 teachers and have a strong
Because
impact.
it's dependent.
So
So
that's where I come
Yeah.
from.
Would it
I
be
can show
helpful
you.
to model that
Yeah.
out,
Could
cost-wise?
show you.
Yeah.
You know, that's just something I've been thinking about.
Yeah.
Because I used to work for a company that everyone had a coach, and now they're going to, they're not having full-time employees be coaches. They're now doing it
Outsourcing.
consultative. Yeah, so that would be interesting to see.
We've done a little bit of that with the Better Lessons people, particularly at Middlebrook and the high school. It was virtual coaching. The teachers didn't find it to be particularly helpful.
Yeah.
It's hard to develop a relationship with an outside
just
person.
different.
and develop-
100%. But again, like in a world of budget, you're
Yeah.
looking at a pretty large budget item. And when I get stopped at the salad bar wondering what's wrong with us that we can't figure out a $90 million budget, that comes up often.
I would say, though, if we were to talk to most of our teachers in this district, maybe one school aside, they would tell you that their coach is pivotal to their success.
Yeah.
It's invaluable. It's just,
I know, but again, it's at what cost?
I get the
I
cost.
agree, in a perfect world, it's invaluable, it's wonderful, everyone should have one.
Well,
The idea of modeling and role-playing, that's how you learn, that's how adults learn. But it's just the cost.
you have to put it somewhere. You have to put the money somewhere. And if you don't support your teachers and you don't invest in them getting better and invest in them learning and how to be better teachers, then we're doing the wrong
It's just how you
thing.
invest it, so, yeah, I
Yeah.
want to invest in the teachers, but again, I don't want to turn this into a coaching conversation, but it would be interesting to see a cost benefit of having external coaches. But I just wanted to, I feel like you looked at me when you were talking.
I was looking at everybody. I'm just concerned with the narrative that I hear. It's not, it's just, it's gotten really loud in some places, and it's concerning to me.
The whole budget
So.
is, as Kevin used, train wreck.
But I don't know about you, but when we meet with our teachers
Yeah.
for mid-years and end of years, we send them a sheet of here's what we're going to ask you about. And when we say what's been the best, professional development, what's been the best support that you've had, I mean, the classroom teachers all talk about the coaches.
Yeah.
It's
So-
just
And again,
that,
every school
And I
is
get
different.
it,
Yeah,
right?
but it's so
and
nice
I
to
get
hear
it's
that.
different,
Yeah.
but it's like, I don't know.
teaching is
every single
relational,
one.
so if you have that relation and you have someone who's actually supporting you and going to come in and help you teach, there's nothing better than that. You can go to 1,000 professional developments, get in a car and forget half of what you
Half of
learned
what you did.
down
Yep.
the throughway. I've given workshops where I know they did, just give us 3 things to go
Yeah.
home with. I give them 3 things and I know 2 are out the door, gone.
You'll be lucky with one.
Yeah. This way it's right there, intimate, right?
It's just different.
Yeah, totally, completely.
Anyway. I think
Anything
that's
else, Jen, that you want to point out to us?
it. I think that's enough.
Thank you, thank you. So we're going to move on. So Eric Hawkinson's here. He's going to pitch in for the Joy. We'll talk through the technology budget, and then we'll go from there. We'll see how far we get with time. And we'll make a game time call here, whether
Yep.
we'll talk about curriculum instruction, human resources. Jose is also here for facilities if we have a little bit of time. And, that's also on the docket for Thursday.
Okay.
All right, Eric, you're up.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Just talking about technology. Technology, we're here to support the district, the mission of the district. We're here to support teachers, administrators, facilities, and athletics. Our goal is to make sure the systems are up and running and accessible pretty much 24/7 when you're at school and when you're home for all of our digital resources. We're also looking to leverage a lot of systems. We've been looking at a lot of automation over the years, so we are synchronizing systems. One of the pieces that we were finally able to synchronize as school dismissal manager was something that we were finally able to do. It was a little bit of a challenge at the start of the school year, but I think it's been working very well since then. But as we're talking about systems that are rolled out, CT SEDS, we work with special education in the schools to work on that implementation. We've worked on DESA, we've worked on some of the security systems, and we've been working very diligently on our cyber insurance policies to make sure we stay ahead of the ever-changing security requirements that we need to meet in order to maintain our insurance here in the district. So our budget is looking to support a lot of those initiatives and maintain our systems. When you walk into a classroom, you may not notice all of the systems that we're managing, but all of the student devices, all of the teacher devices, all of the interactive boards, our cameras, our Wi-Fi, all of those systems are, we're managing and maintaining, and in the background, we're working with food services and the state reporting. So a lot of that's unseen, but all of it is important, and when it doesn't work, it becomes very problematic for the district. When you look at the budget this year, the original budget that we came in with was about $250,000 higher. The items that we pulled out this year, we pulled out iPads for Miller Driscoll, we pulled out laptops for Cider Mill, for the replacement laptops for the staff, and we're going to push those into next year's budget. The one thing that did make our budget this year that was very exciting is the presentation space for the Cider Mill gym, which has been cut the last 3 years, I believe. So it's survived the first round. Some of the things that aren't in the budget, though, and we didn't even start to put them in the budget, is 7 years ago we looked at what would we need in the IT budget in order to manage and maintain all of the infrastructure, and we really needed about $1 million a year in the equipment line to make that happen. And that allows us to replace switches and the wireless when it needs it, but also all of the interactive boards. So 2 years ago, we were looking to replace all of the interactive boards at the high school. This budget cycle, we were looking to replace all the interactive boards at Middlebrook. What we're doing is we're replacing 10 to 20 a year as they fail, and then we scavenge parts and move them into other areas. So that's really what we've been doing, is recycling and reusing parts and pieces out of some of the equipment as we replace them with new and upgraded equipment. So that's a number of items that didn't make it into this year's budget, but the laptops for Cider Mill and the iPads will be moved into next year's budget, which it will then push our equipment line up, another $250,000 over where it is, which next year I imagine we're going to have to look for some savings on that line as well. So that's where we are right now. The current budget is up 1.26%, which is a $31,000 increase over last year. Our big moves in the IT department were we had one staff, a 1 FTE reduction of $63,232. That position was moved into contracted services and was moved from a 200-day position to a 12-month position. One of the pieces we have in technology is most of the work happens over the summer in preparation for the fall. That's when we turn over all the classrooms, roll out all the new equipment, and get prepared for the start of school, which is very different than business. In business, you have people constantly working on equipment and systems. Over the summer, we pull everything out of every classroom. We turn over the buildings, clean all the buildings, then we put all the equipment back in. And when we put all the equipment back in, we have to reconnect, reset up, and make sure it's all tested and ready to go. And we go over a period of 3 to 4 days from our 12-month staff to 4,500 people in the district, all using everything on day one. And we want ready access, and we need it to work the first day of school. When it doesn't work on the first day of school, that's very problematic.
It doesn't work on any day of school. If I can add just a little bit of color commentary here. One of the ways that Wilton is different than I think just about every other school district in the state is we outsource our entire back-end IT operation. So Eric comes to us under contracted service for Novus. We made that change 6 or 7 years ago. And the benefits are as he described, and you can give some more detail. In addition to the on-site staffing, we also have virtual support. We have 24/7 kind of back-end support. We pick up efficiencies. The example I just gave is a great indicative of how the whole contract works, but moving the FTE out of our personnel contract allows us to get more time from a contracted service employee than it would otherwise. And as he rightly said, we do all of the work in the summer. When Eric and I were first talking conceptually 7 or 8 years ago, one of our kind of shared goals was that we didn't want to talk about IT. We wanted it to live in the background. And we had some really hard days years ago when we had Cat 3 cables running through the eaves, and one of my watershed memories here about IT was the document I got from the high school staff. Do you remember this, Chuck? Called Technology, and they were so frustrated. It was terrible. You were on the board. So we were asking our folks to do all kinds of things as we're, moving into the digital world, and nothing worked. Everything was antiquated. And I look around today, and again, you can speak to it far better than I can, but we have a system that really serves our kids and our teachers really, really well. It goes down periodically, but not like it had in the past. People have good tools that are quality, except for apparently the kindergarten and their iPads. They have to wait another year. But you get the point. And every year, we're on a planned replacement cycle, and we've had to make some changes and things like that because of the shift in how we're funding and budget constraints. But on the whole, it's a part of this school district operation that works really, really well. And then, most recently, when I look at how we had to leap forward through the pandemic, it was painful for staff, but, on the tech side, we made that transition seamlessly. The infrastructure was there, and I don't know that happened in a lot of other places. And so this is one of those areas that we really don't talk about or highlight enough. It's expensive, but we get a lot of service for a very efficient model. So that's all. Thanks.
So Kevin, where in the budget does Eric's team fall under if they're not FTEs?
It's contracted services, and so you would only see the bottom line there. I can send you the details.
Oh, so contract services is personnel?
Well, anything in the Novus contract.
Got it.
It's also Power School and Gaggle and all of the other district systems and software systems
Got
that we
it,
use.
but personnel's in that.
Personnel would, yes, the contracted personnel would be in that
Right.
line as well.
And that negative 263, 212, that falls under line number 83.7, 5420 for leases?
Yeah.
For leases. So 7 years ago, when we started the process, we were leasing. We were using 5-year leases. The 5-year leases were $200,000 leases, which allowed us to do about $1 million to $1.2 million in purchasing.
Yeah.
A few years back, we stopped leasing, and we were told we couldn't lease anymore. So this was the last lease we had on the books.
So this is just the ending of
This is the ending of the leasing. And we took the lease funds and we moved those right down to the equipment line. So if you look at the equipment line, it's not quite $1 million, and that's really where we need to be in order to maintain. Next year, we're going to have a little bit of a budget challenge going into next year with our E-rate funding. We have the last 2 years of E-rate funding, which we have to show up with actually, we have to put 50% of the purchase in. So we'll need about $400,000 to leverage the E-rate funds that we're eligible for. We'll need that over the next 2 years. So that's going to allow us to upgrade all of our infrastructure in year 7 and 8. Which is our timeline for our switches and wireless to be upgraded.
And under equipment, that's also falls under all the iPads and the Chromebooks?
Yes.
And
Yes. So the equipment for this year, we're replacing 575 Chromebooks. We'll have 125 laptops for support staff and the Middlebrook staff. We have 50 iMacs that are coming in for the high school for the art department. Those units are, I think, in year 6, 7, and 8, and they've been pushed a number of years, so we've been able to keep those in. Presentation spaces at Cider Mill Gym and the Middlebrook cafeteria. one of the pieces we've really worked on over the last 6 or 7 years is coming up with a standard presentation space. And we've worked through the district, so any space you go into, the majority of spaces right now you walk into, it's the same amplifier, microphone, HDMI configuration, so you can present throughout the district using the same tool set. So we have 2 large spaces that we still need to address at Middlebrook in the cafeteria and also at Cider Mill. But most of the other spaces we've completed in the district. And interactive board pilot, one of the pieces that we'll be doing is we're going to roll out sort of core spaces in each of the buildings with some of the new interactive boards, and look at an instructional pilot next year that will allow us to really leverage how we're putting classrooms together going forward. So the new interactive boards allow teachers to actually, you can walk around the classroom and you can work off of your tablet with your stylus. You don't have to be connected to a wire. The sound, the microphones, you can actually have, all the students can connect in and you can see all their screens on some of these interactive boards. So it's all built into the, it's a feature and functionality that has been there for years, just didn't work very well 3-4 years ago, and we finally have the speed in the interactive displays that we can leverage that technology.
And are we using that technology?
We're currently...
That's specific, like it's at Cider Mill or...
We're not currently using it. We're starting the pilot this next year.
Got it.
This next generation actually has the, it works. So 4 years ago, when you did it, it was very clunky, it was slow, it didn't work consistently. We now have equipment that it does work consistently, it's fast, and it's now ready for us to start piloting and using.
And just, is there a dollar for dollar difference between the interactive whiteboard and then a more typical setup of projector and?
Yes, it's about 2/3 of the cost. If you're looking at a new installation, we're able to reuse some of the cabling, which actually brings the price down. But it's about 2/3 of the cost, but the lifespan is about 20% to 25% longer with the flat panels. One of the interesting pieces about this is and this actually goes with facilities. So I just want to thank the board for allowing us to bring Lewis in with facilities, who's our district electrician. The amount of wiring and cabling we've been able to do because he's on staff has been phenomenal. The cost savings on projects is, I'm scared to actually add it all up. To tell you, it's.
I mean, he's all over the place.
It's amazing. It's amazing what he's saved on the projects. But all of the new interactive displays, when they go in, are centrally managed. So we were able to turn them on, turn them off, monitor them, push the updates out manually. Right now, we go board to board and push updates out. And we've been able to do that in a number of areas. So we used to have desktops set up for all the teachers, and they had a laptop. We now just have laptops with a docking station. So we eliminated almost 700 desktops that we were replacing every 5 years. That's $700,000 worth of equipment we don't need or use in the district anymore. So that's not even in our replacement plans anymore. So that's really one of our goals, but for us to put in the flat panels without having Lewis to help us do the wiring for that, because we buy the cable, Lewis puts it in, it would be almost cost prohibitive for us to add that into the project. Our costs would be as much, if not more, than what we were doing with an old smart board.
Yeah, he's all over the place, so
and he's everywhere.
been great, Lewis.
Well, at Cider Mill, for instance,
It's been fantastic having him on.
Oh, sorry. We have 35 cameras we'd like to have in at Cider Mill. We don't have the
lots
funding,
of drops.
but we put all the drops in. So all the recommended camera drops at Cider Mill, they're wired. They're ready
I didn't
to go.
bring that up. That's right. That
We
could
just-
be
we just
another
need-
budget.
We just, once we
That was
find
awesome.
funding for that, then
Are
we're
these
ready to go.
security cameras
These are security cameras.
for each room?
No, out in like the hallways.
Got it.
So whenever we have a bathroom incident,
Yes.
it's nice to be able to track who's going in and out.
Yeah.
But if we were just missing so many kind of around the building that
Right.
You just-
Yeah, one of the major, we'll talk about this when we get to Jose's budget. There's a proposed ad of $234,000 to address cameras.
security,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
The cameras.
if we're looking to make reductions, that's going to be one of the areas we want to talk about. We
And-
can get into that.
For a technology question, and I know this might be, this is just a high fly in the pie question. I know for the high school, we need to bring your own device. Could we ever consider moving that down a little bit for cost savings?
The
I was
problem-
just talking to a school that in second grade, you get your own device. You're expected to bring your own device.
Yeah, I mean, second grade might be fine, but the challenge is in the tested grades, we can't do the state testing on student-owned devices.
Right.
There's a particular, whatever, desktop that's locked.
Yes,
They have to
secure
use.
desktop that we have to provide.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to ask you to speak about that anyway. So we, through the pandemic, we got a bunch of Chromebooks donated to us or given to us from the state that we've used for testing here at the high school, and those things are going to age out on us.
3 years. 3 years.
So
We've
would
got
it be a
another-
cost benefit to get a bunch of like desktop computers for testing and then have everyone bring their own device?
So one of the challenges that we have with testing, so 7 years ago, we tested grade, class level, or we'd have 3 or 4 classes testing at a time. We're now able to compress all of our testing into one day. So we can actually test the entire grade level and school in one day. So the amount of time savings that we have by being able to compress our testing windows, so we are able to test the entire high school in one day for the testing that we do. So the testing window, instead of being a week of testing,
But the high school has their bring your own device, so how are they able to do testing?
they do. During the pandemic, we had devices that came in from the state that.
Oh, so they're testing on these.
So they're testing on the
they're not
state
on their own-
devices.
got it.
They're not on their own devices.
Yeah.
We have in 3 years, those units will no longer be under warranty or supported. So in 3 years, we really have to have a discussion as to whether we continue with that model. Do we provide devices for the high school? Do we have an option that we can test on student devices now? So that's a conversation we have to have in 2 years to really determine how we're going to move forward with some of the high school testing.
But if we wanted to have that conversation now for, say, 8 grades 2 through 8, is it possible for them to test on their own device?
Right now, it's not.
Because of firewalls and such?
Well, we don't have secure browsers. We don't have the ability to monitor and manage the devices. One of the big benefits about having devices in K through 8 is every student has the same device with the same software product, the same version. We can manage everything centrally. So if you could imagine a teacher with 17 second graders on 12 different devices with no passwords to do updates or patches,
Right.
with different parental controls trying to teach a lesson, it will be quite exciting.
Yeah.
Right now, if a student has a device that's not working, they go to the library gives them a replacement device, and they're up and running within 10 or 15
Yeah.
minutes. Same thing with our staff. If the staff member has a device that goes down, they walk to the library, they hand the device in, they log in, they're back up and running in 5-10 minutes. So, and if they put a ticket in, we usually get to them within 24 hours. So we have the ability to manage and maintain the devices. The challenges there'll be many challenges if we're trying to do bring your own device grades 2 through 8.
What if we just did 7, 8? I mean, would that be would that be a significant cost savings? Are we talking a couple $100,000?
So what's 300 times 300, right? That's the
Yeah,
cost of the
that's-
Chromebook?
It's about $300 a device.
Yeah.
It's $300 per device.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think the replacement plan that we have that Eric put in place, which makes sense to me, is kids get them in 3rd grade and then again in 6th grade. And
Yes.
so,
They live with
I don't think you wouldn't do BYOD in 8th grade because you've got a Chromebook in 6th grade
Right,
that
right.
carries you through middle school and
Right.
into high school if you need it.
Right.
I'm just,
So-
again, like thinking
Yeah.
budget cut ways. I was interested talking to this person in 2nd grade, you bring your own device, and that's it.
Yeah. Is that a public school or private school?
Public school, South Carolina.
Yeah. One of the things we do have is that the devices last 3 years. So you're issued a device when you start in grade 3, and then it's 3, 4, 5. Those devices then come offline. We don't have parents purchase insurance on the devices, because as those devices come off of warranty, we have our team going through and we take screens, keyboards, cases, and then any of the new devices that are breaking, we're using those parts to do the repairs.
Right.
So we're using those parts and pieces to manage and maintain the fleets and the non-warrantied items as we move forward. And the same thing when you get to middle school is you get a device and you carry that for 3 years. If you need that in high school, you take the device to high school with you. We have students at high school that need devices and are eligible for devices, and we provide those devices as well. So that's, and then the last 2 items we have are some sound field replacements in the budget, and also we have replacing the firewall and some additional server storage. WETV, we just brought in, we brought them in January, so we just brought all of their data over to back up, and they are producing a lot of data, terabytes and terabytes of data with all of the games and videos and things that they're doing right now, which it's a phenomenal amount of work they're doing. But we wanted to support them and make sure that we're managing and backing up and securing that data for them. So we brought them across. We need a little bit more server storage for just the regular district work for next year as well. Are there any other technology questions or things that I could address?
So just the last piece for me is, one of the questions that came up when Ruth and I were with Board of Finance a week ago was the difference between purchasing equipment outright and leasing equipment. And if we were fully funding, we're pretty close to fully funding our equipment budget. From my perspective, it makes sense to kind of maintain that and to continue to purchase outright rather than to go to lease now, especially since interest rates are higher. I think we had Dawn look a couple weeks ago. The interest rates are about 3.75% or something 5 years. So I think we're at a point now where we would continue to try to maintain the investment and not revert back to leasing. The issue came up a couple of years ago at the Board of Selectmen table, and they were questioning some of the values of the lifespan of the equipment versus the life of the lease. And we started to phase out the leasing of Chromebooks first, and then we've been steadily moving away from leases over the last 3 years.
I would say the only, the one concern that we have to be careful of is with technology, it's working, it's in the background, we're not talking about it a lot. When we start pushing some of the infrastructure pieces past their useful life and past their warranted life, that's where we really can start chasing our tail. So we just want to be careful that we don't push things out too far.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You had me at 17 second graders. Just saying.
Okay. 17.
It's like, I don't even know what I said.
She's being relentless.
Yes, I know.
Great. All right. Other questions for Eric?
Oh, wait, one more, Eric. What's
Yep.
the training conference increase in $11,000?
Oh, so we tried something last year with Miller Driscoll, and we had, instead of sending people actually to Power School University, for half the cost, we could do a week-long training session here in the summer. And so we sent 2 of the front office staff from Miller Driscoll, and what they were able to accomplish this year, they had some problems with Power School, and it wasn't really a problem with Power School. They were able to ask some questions. How can we do this differently? In the training, they were able to actually identify, figure out the new process, implement the new process, and then roll out the new process. One of them had to do with the substitute teachers, which saves 20, 25 minutes a day, every day, all year long. just with that one piece that was implemented. So what we have in the budget this year is we put in the budget for 2 people from each of the schools to attend the summer session. Because we got a lot out of it last year, and we have a number of people that we think will benefit greatly from that training. Because it's really being able to sit down, sort of go over an interview, and then take your problems of practice where you have some things you think you might be able to streamline and do better in the building, and then work with the team to actually make those changes and modifications so you can hit the ground running at the end of the week.
They loved it. They also got to pick different modules depending upon the needs. It was great.
Good. Anything else? How you feeling? You got 13 more minutes. We can stop if you've had enough, or we can, Chuck's got a little bit in his budget. Maria, there are no substantive changes in the HR budget. There's nothing substantive in my budget. We can walk through some of those if you have particular questions or things you wanted to hear about.
I think mine would take maybe 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's hear Chuck's.
All right.
It's not going to get any better any other day.
Sorry, Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to pass around my kind of cheat sheet here.
Yeah, so we'll pick up seeing you on Thursday. Yeah. Thanks.
You're so neat.
And I'm going to have good dexterity here. So as...
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was going to ask a general question, but go ahead. Sorry.
So as my friends to the left of me here mentioned, we were all tasked with coming up with a 10% reduction, which I was able to do in my controllable costs. You can see that at the top here. In the testing budget, we were able to decrease by $4,000, and my department, instructional improvement, by about $12,000, which brought us to $16,000, which is a 6.61% overall between both testing and instructional improvement. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I needed to add summer school into the operating budget. I don't know if you remember, but summer school used to be funded by the grant. And the grant is going away, so I got to 10%, but then had to go back up. So that's where the increase comes from. Summer school, I think, is a worthwhile investment. We're able to demonstrate, pretty significant improvement for the kids and a lack of regression when they got back in the fall. So I put it in the budget because I thought it was
Are we offering it for the same numbers this year or more?
Pretty much the same numbers. I mean, we offer it, but not everybody takes advantage of it.
Yeah.
We're anticipating the same number.
And it'll be 4 weeks again?
Yes. We're debating whether or not to start at the end of June. I'm having some difficulty getting staff to work in August, and just where the 4th of July falls, I didn't want to start the week after because then I might not have staff the beginning of August.
Yeah.
So we're toying with the idea and exploring it with the staff if we start at the end of June, then take a week break, and then do 3 weeks. I think that's probably how we're going to end up doing it.
Could we ever, continuing education used to run some sort of summer school here at the high school for the middle school.
Oh.
I gotta figure out what that was.
That's Dolores. I'm sure she would.
Yeah, I can.
I was just curious if we could ever put some of that on continuing education, or on, what's it fall under?
It'd be continuing ed. I mean, the difference would be, it would be a pay-for service
Right,
as opposed
yeah.
to a service we provide. And I think,
Right.
Again, it's philosophical. If we feel strongly that kids need it and it's important to their program, I wouldn't want to tax parents for it.
This was more like an accelerated, for the other end
Like
of the
enrichment.
spectrum.
Yeah, they've had those different.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I
I-
think they offer a.
They used to call those step into third
Right.
grade or
It's just amazing
something.
how many
Yeah.
parents are like,
Every
how do I
grade
get my
level.
kid into this summer intervention? And I'm like, well, it's actually for
It's
a
invitation.
group of,
Yeah.
right, it's invitation only. But I just was curious if we had been working with continuing ed to try and do some
Yeah, I
enrichment.
guess it's an interesting question. I mean, let's talk about find out what people would want.
That class got sold out really quickly.
Yeah. You were just saying, it's like
It's
step into third grade,
They
step
have them
into
in every
6th
grade.
grade,
Yes,
step into
yes,
9th grade.
Yeah, that's
Right.
exactly what it was.
And they would have like that grade level teacher
Yes.
teach it.
But I don't think they do it anymore, so I was just curious if the schools, if this, I was just curious what happened, or if this interview.
I'll ask Dolores, I don't
Yeah,
recall
I'm
why
not
they
sure.
stopped doing it. I don't know if it was enrollment driven, I
Yeah,
don't
I don't
know.
know.
I don't know. So that's really my budget, unless you had specific questions to ask.
You want to just talk about some of what we're paying for under instructional improvement?
Sure. So basically, most of the costs are put into the schools. What's in my budget are things that make sense for the district to take care of. So for instance, the assessment budget is mine because we test district-wide, so I assume that cost. Professional learning, again, a lot of the costs live in the buildings. I keep a certain amount in my budget for unexpected things. A lot of the FAPA professional learning is in my budget because it's district-wide. Things like the art show, the library show, those are district initiatives, so they're in the district budget. Summer curriculum days are in my budget. I do keep 200 of those for the subject areas that we're reviewing that particular year. I take the remaining 500 and I divide it equally among the buildings. They get about 125 each to do some of the follow-up in the years after the curriculum review. So we're always continuing to revise the curriculum.
Chuck, what's ELL for ELL?
English language learners, and I should change that because it's now multilingual
Language,
learners.
MLL, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, we should talk about that too.
Yeah, so we do have many more students coming in who are multilingual learners, and some of them are what are known as newcomers. So they have very limited English proficiency and require a great deal of support. Laura, you may remember, we for years only had one ELL teacher, and we added a second one, and they're being stretched very thin right now.
And those teachers are at what schools?
They're working all 4 schools. Certainly Millard Driscoll is the place where the bulk of our students are.
That's what I was wondering.
But we still have students entering and continuing to need services in the upper level. It kind of decreases.
That you would say speak little to no English.
They could come in at any grade level.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we had a number of students come from the Ukraine. Some did have some English, some didn't. But even if it's one student,
Yeah.
to support them in the general ed curriculum, we need it can be very intensive work, particularly like at the high school. Like I think we have 2 kids. They're in different grade levels, different languages, so that's a heavy workload for the teacher, even though there were only 2 students there.
So how would one MLL teacher teach that, not knowing what the origin language?
We could
That's
do a
right.
workshop on that.
But
It's
I
not,
mean, is it so that those do we bring in extra?
no.
Okay, so those teachers are able to.
Yeah, we
Wow.
don't approach working with multilingual learners by trying to teach them in their native language.
Okay.
We're trying to teach them English. Certainly, our ML teachers have access to translation services, particularly in communicating with families. But with the students, the mode of instruction is primarily in English. We do have one ML teacher who speaks Spanish. Talia, I believe, speaks Spanish. So she, for our Spanish-speaking learners, can help with that a little bit. Anyway, we're having difficulty covering everybody. I started a conversation with Kevin to see whether or not we would consider an ML paraprofessional. That way, as kids come in the middle of the year, and without having, Jen and I had a meeting recently where I was shifting schedules around to try to cover everybody. If we had a para, it would make it much easier, and I think it would be more effective. I mean, some of the kids, I know Talia feels she should be seeing every day. She just doesn't have the time to see them every day.
Yeah. Our newcomers, we've had an increase
Yeah.
in newcomers.
So with a para, we would be able to better cover some of the kids. But at this point, we didn't put it in the budget because of, what'd you call it, a train wreck?
No, I didn't.
The budget actually performs really well. It's just gotten the proposal's huge.
Yeah.
It's the growth that's the train wreck, not what it actually does.
No, yes. I think we need to clarify
Yeah.
what we mean by train wreck.
It's fair.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of
And
vehicle
do you
metaphor.
So Sarah puts out that, I don't know if it's a monthly newsletter.
Yeah.
I'll share that with the board. Do you know off the top of your head how many home languages we have? in
Oh,
this
I think it's up in the 20s.
It's amazing, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Think
At
about it, it's
Miller School, we have
incredible.
almost 30.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I
It's
thought it was
so
close to
cool.
30.
That's great.
It's amazing.
That's great.
We have some kids who speak 4 languages.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had my kids just trying to get their English really well.
And
Yeah,
Chuck,
we have that too.
oh, sorry, go ahead. No, sorry, the 235, 250 and 40317, is that all the summer? That's how much the summer costs? It says, summer curriculum days.
Yes, it's about 50 grand. Is that what that says?
Well, it says 230.
No,
Okay.
the summer program is on the line for the 40317, so it's about $55,000, and the rest is the summer curriculum days. It's all on the one line. Adding those 3 lines together is not.
Got it, okay.
And did we use all of our days this year?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay, all right. Anything else?
Thank you.
Such a cheery meeting.
Well, thank you to Kathy and John for just
Yes.
your presentations, but also the work you did.
You're welcome.
Despite
You're welcome, Laura.
The train wrecks and the perseverance.
Supplies and abilities every year.
That's right. Other comments, questions, feedback in terms of format, conversation? Are you hearing what you think you need to hear? Is there anything kind of just generically within, as we're going through these cost centers, that you want subsequent folks to focus in on a little bit more granularly?
I sent some questions,
Great.
so whenever you guys have a chance to
Super.
take a look at them.
Okay, terrific. Good. I just saw.
I saw
those
them.
today,
I sent
too.
them to
Okay.
you.
Can we just review the agenda again? Because so tomorrow is athletics and special services.
Yeah, so you have
And
the high school athletics, and then special services, and we're going to dedicate the majority of that time to Andre and company. You know, that's where, I mean, most of the growth is in that budget overall. And then Thursday, Fran will be here. We'll do the remainder of the district budget, and we'll
Sure.
address facilities and Middlebrook, right? Yeah.